Good evening. Brierly shareholders turned out in force in Dunedin this afternoon for the first ever Brierly's AGM to be held in the city. About 3,000 shareholders arrived for the meeting. The last Sir Ron Brierly will attend as chairman. He's to become the company's founding director. Kathy Graham reports.
Traffic was diverted for the afternoon from around the town hall. The organisers, who were expecting a crowd of about 4,000, were well prepared. So were shareholders. Most arrived early to be sure of a good position. And it was clear from Sir Ron's reception that he was the one they'd come to see.
I'm Ron Brierly, and this is...
The meeting itself's due to end about now. Guests will be served drinks in this mammoth marquee while the food's being set up.
We've got a much larger base here in Dunedin in terms of both shareholders and activity than I ever realised, and it struck a chord with me personally as well, which the board probably wasn't aware of, that many years ago Dunedin was the home of so many more public companies than it is today, and I had, albeit a modest involvement with many of the corporate battles at the time, so I used to travel to Dunedin quite extensively.
Earlier, Sir Ron made a presentation to the city on behalf of the company. $90,000 to the University of Otago to establish a commerce and business library.
The greatest weapon, the greatest asset that one can have, or that I've always found in the commercial world, is information and knowledge. And without that, there's no starting point.
Ron's own starting point was in Dunedin. The Chancellor in turn presented Sir Ron with a memento of that first unsuccessful bid for Otago farmers and a packet of microfiche of company records. Not everyone's cup of tea, but Sir Ron looked pleased enough.
Earlier, Sir Ron officiated at a function very dear to his heart, the launching of a book by Otago cricketer Stephen Bock, and Sir Ron had no doubt about its success.
This book is going to sell so fast at Whitcall's, going to be a collector's item.
The Audit Office has taken the former Waitaki Catchment Board to task for overpaying redundant staff. It says $125,000 too much was paid when 15 people received a total of $800,000. One worker with the board less than a year got 2 years' pay. The Auditor General says such generosity doesn't sit well with the trustee-like role of those elected to public office. A new push is starting for an international airport in Queenstown. Businessmen with copies of the local authorities' feasibility studies of a site under the Remarkables claim there's little to stop it. They're also suggesting an airport on top of Queenstown Hill. And Queenstown's mayor wants studies of other sites, including Wanaka. Michael Lynch reports.
From the Whisper Jet to this flight simulator right in the middle of town, there's a new appetite for the fast lane in Queenstown. Plans for a new international airport here on the Jardine farm under the Remarkables went on the back burner with the council change. Norm Geary quitting the pilot seat in Air New Zealand and Ansat's new jet arriving. In the meantime, the extension to the present airport's been called insufficient even before it's opened. Tourism's starting to boom again, and with it the cries for an international gateway.
Now, people at the moment are canvassing airports for Invercargill, airports for Cromwell. Will the locals wear that, do you think?
No, I think that's just totally clouding the issue. The investment won't come for such an airport, which has to be commercially driven, unless it's sited close to Queenstown.
Using the Official Information Act, the Development Association's got hold of key data from the 13 reports done on the airport. And its reading is there's little to stop the Remarkable site going forward. Wind share and cost to call $30 million or so are the final stumbling blocks. It's now drumming up local support and is even putting up the intriguing alternative of a strip right on the top of Queenstown Hill. It says there's tons of room and the site, possibly shared with the Kingston Flyer, would be a gimmick in itself. Mayor Bradford's welcoming all this energy, but he says the southern South Island needs 747s, and the Wanaka option needs a harder look too.
I have one view, a number of other very good people have other views. We need forums where we can sit down and talk our way through it and see who comes out.
But any airport, even if it's only for 767s at the Remarkable site, it'd be at least 4 years down the track. In the meantime, Queenstown will have to content itself with its simulation.
Going on holiday and going to the dentist are not activities we think of as having much in common, except maybe if you're at primary school in Southland. John McDermott explains.
It all started 5 years ago when the old dental clinic at Gorge Road School fell into disrepair. With children's teeth so much better these days, it wasn't worth building another. So after much thought and planning, here's what took its place.
How are you today, Ross? Oh, you look nice too. Would you like to pop up for me?
5-year-old Ross Severinson is one of the first of many children who'll be treated in the clinic. The caravan comes with its own water pressure and compressed air systems, and according to the nurses, is a joy to work in.
It's so light and airy, and everything is just encouraging as the children come into the clinic.
There are 61 conventional clinics still operating in Southland, but the cost of upkeep and changing dental patterns suggest caravans may be the way of the future.
The clinics aren't used for any great length of time at all of a year, and it seems a fearful waste to be maintaining a building for just a few weeks' use.
The $40,000 caravan clinic will come into use next week.
If today's temperature is anything to go by, summer's come back, and as soon as the sun appears again, look out. The message from the Cancer Society is there's no such thing as a safe suntan, and its campaign against skin cancer and melanoma aims to keep people pale. Lee Davies reports.
The Cancer Society's melanoma campaign last summer hit so hard, local doctors were inundated with people having their moles and freckles checked out.
And that's the one you worried about there, isn't it, Bernard? Yeah.
This year, the publicity's aimed at the under-10s. And it's working. School children are quick to tell you there's no such thing as a safe suntan. Dermatologists, too, have plenty to say to people who lie in the sun.
I think the main thing to say to people is just to use their common sense, avoid prolonged periods of unprotected exposure, certainly to avoid the period between 11 and 3.
He's not recommending people avoid the sun altogether, but that they use equal quantities of common sense and sunscreen. He also warns sunbeds are no substitute for either.
They're very popular at the moment, the sunbed. For a fair-skinned person like myself, getting a tan with a sunbed really provides very little protection. It's much less protection than a very weak sunscreen.
Living in the south's no great protection either. We're just as much at risk from ultraviolet rays as those in the north, and of course we get so much more sunshine down here.
And we do, and congratulations to Craig McNaughton, Bruce Warrington, Paul Sharp and John G, who are going to return to the United States to take part in a major American computer programming competition. All the guys from Otago University, the very best for that. We'll be back tomorrow. Good night.